Great to have you here today. I'm so excited to talk about this topic because I see how productive organizations are that are embracing the concept that MLSs are really different types of organizations than associations. And the folks that do that are better on both fronts. The associations are stronger, the MLSs are stronger, and just had some great results yesterday from a group that's done a lot of this, and their MLS satisfaction engagement scores were off the chart. So it really does work. It's pretty cool. So I'm really excited to talk to you about all of this today. So I'm going to start first by let me just introduce Wavegroup a little bit. Then I'm going to introduce our esteemed panelists, and then we'll jump into it. So just for those of you that don't know Wavegroup, we're a company that does a lot of things. Many people think it's Maryland and just associations and MLSs, but we really do a whole lot more than that. We work a lot with consumer groups. We do mortgage and title. We do a ton of work with brokerages, and particularly finding the best ways for brokerages and associations and MLSs to come and work together. And we do that not only in the US, but we do that around the world. So it's a really fun business, and I love my job. It's really fun. I get to work with great people. Speaking of great people, just wanted to show you our team. So Victor and I are, the managing partners, founder CEOs of this, but we've got a whole host of other super talented people. I'm so impressed when we get together with Kevin Hawkins, who runs communications, and he is now the real AI guy. If any of you have seen him, he's tremendous for AI training. And Corey, his son, is a big part of our team as well. And we have David Gumper, who runs the technology area, and he and Evan and Nelson are doing a lot of work on the AI space, which we can talk about. Then Brazil comes into us with video production. He's an LA entertainment guy that brings great video production capabilities. Then we have George Slusser, who, for any of you that have any of the Anywhere brands in your marketplace, he's the guy that rolled up 1,200 companies to create what ultimately became Realogy and now Anywhere. So he's tremendous with M&A, MLS valuations and brokerage valuations and M&A. And then we have Mark McLaughlin, who's a broker manager, operator extraordinaire who works with us, along with Finley, who helps us actually do M&A. Then Bondolin runs our marketing agency. She comes from the technology side of the house and has some really good ways of helping MLSs get more adoption and engagement with their technologies. And then Ethan is our finance guy. He'll be the one to tell you, no, it won't work. Just stop. He's always going to be the reality finance guy. Jason runs marketing for us, and then Monica and Michael support all of us in doing all those things. So it's a really neat team and a very diverse team, much more so than just Victor and I, which a lot of people think it's just us at the moment. And then I think most of you probably know me, but as I said, CEO of Wavegroup, president of RE Technology, which is a great tool to help educate agents and brokers and MLS committees and chairs on all of the things going on with technology. I just came off of being the chair of the National Small Business Association. And for those that have served in those roles, being the immediate past chair is much better than being the chair. It's a lot of work. So we're, love MLS, love everything, love associations, work with both, do lots of strategic planning, research, recruiting, all of that. And so we have a lot of passion about finding the best ways for both types of organizations to optimize their effectiveness. So I'm going to introduce this now, and then I'm going to take us through a little bit of a presentation here just to kind of frame it. But we have Lori Miller with us today, and she is the CEO of the Pikes Peak MLS in Colorado, and her partner in crime, Anne Marie Smith, who's the CEO of the Pikes Peak Association of Realtors. So they have created, I think, a really good model for what many other organizations might want to look at. And they'll tell you how they kind of got there, maybe not the most straight path, but it's working really well. So we'll talk about that in a minute. So welcome, guys. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, so I just wanted to frame, I know this stuff may seem basic, but it's a good frame for us as we're talking through this topic, right? So basically what we're hearing now is there's a lot of organizations thinking about how do we optimize the value, the engagement, the loyalty to customers by making sure that associations are absolutely as strong as they can be and telling their story and expanding what they do in terms of value every day, as well as how can MLSs, who are really technology companies, how can they both deliver completely different but incremental value propositions to the customers that we all serve. So just to remind us again, a lot of times, especially if your organization brands the MLS and the association under the same name. For customers, and frankly, sometimes even for leadership, it gets a little muddy about who does what and what is really the association, what's the MLS, right? So I thought we would just kind of go to the back to the basics and just outline that, right? So the first is, what is an association? It's a trade organization, right? It's here to protect the best interests of the practitioners that we work with and the clients that they serve. That's it's bottom line, right? So what are we really responsible for? Making sure that, we've got a clear path. We've got a marketplace, a political environment that supports buying and selling real estate in as affordable a way as possible, right? Do we have great people out there doing the right thing, understanding their role, being well trained in their role, being passionate about serving the needs of clients? And then, of course, they're well educated with that, right? And we do a lot of things to help them become a community, become a great network, so they can help each other, because no deal is done. Well, not no deal, but very few deals are done with just one practitioner, right? There's usually two and two brokerages involved as well. So that's its core job, right? Basically, we're here to prepare members for the skills they need to serve the best interest of the real estate industry and the consumer, right? So it's not really a technology play. It's a truly, and it's a membership organization, right? Which invites membership engagement. Obviously, the code of ethics is underpinning of all of what we do. And in just about all cases, they're not-for-profit entities. That's not always true. I have seen a few that are for-profit, but for the most part, right? So this is a membership organization. Its job is to make sure that we've got the environment and the people trained effectively and prepared effectively to work together to serve the best interest of the real estate community, right? In its essence, that's what we're here to do, right? Now, what we've done historically is we've taken the mindset and the organizational structure and kind of the way we do business from the associations, and we've moved it over to the MLS. It's kind of become an extension of the MLS, right? But let's talk about what an MLS is, right? At the end of the day, well, first of all, let me go to this. Sorry. We've done surveys now for 2 years, asking people that use local associations, what do they value the most? And it's exactly what I just said, right? It's professional development, it's code of ethics, it's education, and it's advocacy. Those are really the top three things it delivers, right? So every association has full capabilities to dial in on those things, maybe dial up on those things, not only in what you're offering, how much of it you're offering, how in tune it is with today's real estate needs, because we know the market needs change on a regular basis, and is working closely with their brokerage community to make sure that there's a sync, right? There's an alignment between what brokers need to help agents be successful, as well as what associations can do to help agents and brokerages, right, to be successful. So that's kind of the core of what an association focuses on, right? And if you just look at the list of things that you guys do, that's more than a full-time job, right? Just to do education really well, just to think about advocacy, especially in this crazy environment, political environment we work in that is less than productive, to say the least, right? And then to make sure that every single person, whether it's the broker overseeing an agent's behavior or an agent themselves, to understand what professional behavior looks like today and what a consumer expects today, that's more than a full-time job. That's a lot. And then there's a few other things in there, like 14 events and blah, 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 all the other stuff that you guys do. It's a lot. So I don't need to tell you, but it's just to remind us, right? It's a full-time job and then some. And so we asked people, again, in that same survey, how likely are to maintain your NAR membership beyond 2025? Now, good news is in 2024, 17% or almost 1 in 5 said they were not likely. And we did this right after the settlement. So again, we were in kind of cranky land, right? Everybody was upset and blaming NAR for everything, and business wasn't good. And there was a lot of stuff going on, not to mention some of the past history of the stuff NAR's done that doesn't make people happy. Good news is, same question a year later, it's down to 6%. Okay. That's still too many, right? We don't want any, but it's a lot less, right? So it tells me that the world's settling down and that people are kind of settling back in, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't think of each of them as customers, right? And that we shouldn't think about how we earn their business, not just assume their business, because we all know there's lawsuits out there that are saying, maybe a broker shouldn't have to, pay for all of their agents if one of them doesn't want to be a realtor. There's a lot of things spinning out there that might change that, right? So again, associations have a full-time job to say, how do I dial up and dial in and communicate effectively the stuff that I do so people really appreciate me? And probably the most dangerous group of people we have, which is a lot of them, are kind of in the do you need your association? Right? They don't not think they need it, but they don't really think they need it either. They're kind of ambivalent, right? Those are the people I worry about. The ones that are mad, we can get them through it. The ones that love you, they're always going to love you, but it's the ones in the middle that potentially can cause some risk that we got to really drive home what we do well as associations to make sure that we don't have any of those people in the middle that just say, if I have an option, I'm going out, right? So now let's flip over to the other side. What's an MLS? An MLS is a completely different thing. It's a technology services company, right? It has completely different service that it delivers, completely different value that it delivers, and the pace in which things change in the MLS world, and particularly with AI. I mean, if any of you that are using ChatGPT, and I'm sure many of you are, literally every day you go in there, there's a new piece of functionality that it can do for you that it couldn't do yesterday. It's crazy how fast this stuff is changing, right? So an MLS operation can't have the same mindset of, okay, well, we'll start at the bottom up and we'll let the community decide and we'll let them figure out where we go. Because the truth is, nobody knows from the bottom up, frankly, from the top down at this point, what's happening, right? So you need people that are focused, especially on that stuff, so that our industry doesn't fall behind, and that as MLSs, we continue to evolve and sort of maybe even revolutionize the way we deliver services so that we're always on top of the technology, because that's a really important part of the transaction, right? We help actually generate business. Not that we're doing it, but we're facilitating it, right? So it's super important. So what's a technology services company, right? It's about the data. It's about delivering technologies, about making sure people know about the technologies that we offer, because many MLSs, I think our average that we see is 11 or 12 technologies. It's a lot to get every agent to understand all the individual value that each of them create, right? And then very important job of sort of upholding the sanity and the consistency among the industry with the rules and regs. And one thing that if you worked with me, you've heard me say this, these are not members. People that join MLSs are customers or subscribers. They're not part of a membership organization. They're buying technology. They're buying support. They're buying training, right? And many of them are for-profit entities, right? So they even have a different tax structure and a different, in theory, a potentially different goal than an association does, right? But again, we've let them sort of intermingle between them. We've kind of operated these the same way we operate associations. And frankly, in some cases, it just isn't working anymore. It's just not fast enough. It's not decisive enough. And frankly, sometimes we have the wrong people talking about the wrong things, because to understand what's going on in the MLS, you really have to be in it day in and day out. You have to kind of go to school on what's an API and what does that matter and what's an agent and what's it not a real estate agent, what's an AI agent and what's the difference and all that stuff, right? It's a lot. And so to have somebody that loves the industry but doesn't understand technology can be really difficult. It's just really hard to keep up with it. Speaking of a full-time job and then some, right? And so, what do typical technology services companies have, right? First of all, they're customer based, they're not committee based, right? So at the end of the day, they listen to what the practitioner whose needs are changing on a regular basis because their clients' needs are changing. That's who drives their decision, right? And they're decisive, right? They don't let something go from this group to this group to this group to this group. They figure it out, they look at it. Again, with customer input, they make a decision and they move, and they might continually evolve it because you just have to. If you don't do that, you're going to get behind. And while many are not what I would call driven by, hey, our quarter has to be up 10% or we didn't have a good year, we potentially could be more like that, right? Where we can think about how do we diversify our revenue base more effectively? How do we not just take the prices up on our current customers? Maybe there's new customers, or maybe we sell them something else that's of value, right? So those are things that a lot of times we don't focus on a lot, but we potentially could if we really thought of ourselves as technology services company. Again, tech savviness, right? You got to have staff and potentially leadership that is current and understands what the heck we're talking about, right? That knows what a RAG server is and why it matters. Many people don't like RAG server. Is that like a thing? Yeah, no, that's not a RAG server, right? If you look at someone like North Star MLS, Tim Dane, the CEO there, just announced a new governance structure where 6 of their board members are people with technology skills and 5 of them are practitioners. So they work together. The practitioners inform the reality of what it's like to do business out there. But these 6 other folks would be like, hey, I don't think you should do that because there's this new thing that's coming out next week and you should go there, right? So you have people that can drive the technology, the practitioner leaders tell us what we need and what the challenges are, and the other group actually delivers on it. So it's very interesting and different than the way we normally look. And these groups are very performance and, key performance indicator driven, right? So they're rewarded, focused on engagement, satisfaction, and profitability. They're not focused on how many members are excited about us and how many committees do we have, because that's not its goal. Its goal is to deliver great technology, right? So just wanted to kind of frame that as we talked, right? Because when we talk about these two different organizations, they do have different skills and different needs, and frankly, different types of leaders as well that have different types of experience. So with all that, I want to turn it over to our two folks here that work together on this team of the association leadership and the MLS leadership. And recently, within the last, last 12 months, Lori, you become CEO of the MLS, is that right?
Yeah, I was interim for a little over a year and a half, and then it's in September they finalized it to the CEO.
Right. So you basically, for almost 2 years now, have been running it as a CEO. You made it official. So Anne Marie, I think we talked a little bit about this. It'd be great for you to tell us, kind of go back a little bit on the history of how you guys became those interim CEOs, and kind of where the organization was and how that happened. It was a little bit I don't want to say by accident or happenstance, but
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
tell us that story.
Well, at PPAR, we had a unique situation in that our CEO was out sick and he had health battles that he battled for over a year. And then he finally did lose his battle. And during that time, Lori and I became the glue that kept everything together. She ran the MLS and I ran the association. So the two of us found ourselves leading in areas that we had major gaps. I know nothing about technology, and she wasn't steeped in association management. So we sat down together early on and we had a very candid conversation. And we agreed on a simple truth that we were stronger if we led side by side rather than trying to cover everything alone. So we made the commitment to stay in our lanes, to respect each other's expertise, and most importantly, be brutally honest with one another. So that promise, the promise to create this safe environment where we could speak our truth, even if it was uncomfortable, became the foundation of how we set up our teams. That's how we lead. So it built trust, it created clarity, and it ultimately set the stage for promoting us into our positions of CEO.
That's awesome. I love that, telling the truth, because sometimes people tend to do that at the bar and not facing each other. So it's great that you guys do that in person. I love that. And so before you actually got into these roles, maybe let's talk a little bit about the structure of the company, because the company was already, or the companies, I should say, were already structured as two separate entities, right?
Mhm.
Can you want to talk a little bit about that, Lori? They were already a for-profit and a not-for-profit, I believe. Is that right?
That's correct. RSC became a for-profit in 1987, and it was for the tax purposes that you talk about.
Mm-hmm. And just so the rest of us that aren't from Pikes Peak, RSC is Pikes Peak MLS. It's the same thing, right?
Yeah,
Same
that's
corporation.
correct. The
RSC is the
corporation is,
corporate name? Yeah.
yep,
Okay,
it's
good.
Realtor Service Corp. Yep.
Gotcha. I know lots of times people have holding company names and others, and it gets confusing to the rest of us. Okay, great. So when you stepped into those interim CEO roles, what changed in terms of the day-to-day operation or your role within the company? Or maybe let's start with you, Lori, and then we'll come back to you on that, Anne Marie.
Well, I don't know if anything really changed for me because I was you could call it a director of MLS or vice president of the MLS at that point. Um, I was still functioning with the possibility that there could be a CEO, one CEO that would come in and run both. So I was still kind of functioning where I was trying to run it as if I was the CEO, but still knowing that someone else could come in and possibly change it. So there was, there wasn't a lot of change for me until they actually made it official. And then it was like I could take it and run with it.
Gotcha. Okay. So I think that's probably true of a lot of folks, that even if you're not officially the CEO or the president or executive director, whatever title you get, people that run MLS organizations, even when they're reporting to AEs, kind of operate on their own anyway, right? When you say,
Yes.
for the most
Yeah, I
part,
would
because it
say
is
so.
a different skill set. So with you, Anne Marie, when you stepped up into interim CEO, what changed for you?
So I went from doing HR for the association to taking a leadership role and trying to cover for Steve in the best way I thought he would be pleased with me doing it. And
Hmm.
we finally just had to say, I'm not sure how he would run it, but this is how we want to run it. And
Okay.
we want to lead and we want to make him proud of us when he comes back. Um, and it was just to lead with our heart and lead to serve our members. And if we always put our members first, it will all be okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good mantra, right? If at the end of the day, if you really do care about your customer, um, I mean, we all make mistakes. I'm sure there's things that haven't gone perfectly, but at the end of the day, you're doing what really matters. You're not worrying about the preservation of the association of the MLS as much as that. I mean, of course, you have to do that financially, but your focus is on the people that you're serving.
Right.
Yeah,
And what
I got
this allowed us to do was that I could focus on the association side. So
you.
I could deal with the advocacy, the strategic planning, the policies, the things
Mhm.
that move the association forward. I
Right.
know very little about the MLS side, so it allowed for Lori to do that side of the house, and I did my side of the house, and we kept ourselves in our lanes and kept moving it forward.
I love that. So on the governance side, Lori, we will start with the MLS. Did anything change in terms of who was on your board or how they got there or who you reported to? Any of those things, did they change as you were stepping into that CEO role?
Yeah, what one of the things that they changed is when they because there was a lot of, how can we really have two CEOs in the structure that we are because we're wholly owned, right, by
Hmm.
PPAR. And so yeah, there was some governance structure policies that were done that that they put in that RSC would have its own CEO, and that was
Okay.
something that the shareholder ratified. So and then as far as the board goes, one of the things that we started doing um, probably 2 years ago when I stepped into the interim position was that we actually went to a nominating committee environment. So where they would fill out an application and then they would be interviewed by a nominating committee. But their qualifications were different than what they would do on the shareholder board.
Okay.
We had a whole lot of we their qualifications were that they needed to have a technology background and all of that. So that because when they were walking into the MLS board, it is about what's going on in the MLS industry and it is about what's going on in technology. And so we don't want to just fill seats with warm bodies. We want people that are going to be actually involved in these decisions that are being made and to what services that we bring to our subscribers.
Gotcha. So let's talk about how you got there and then we'll talk about how it's working. So when I go around the country, I hear lots of times on association boards, I hear some people saying, absolutely, that makes sense. Very much like you said, Anne Marie, I don't have those skills. It's a whole different thing. Let them be their own thing and let them run because we need great technology to do our business. And then I hear some other people on the boards are like, no, 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 we've always done it this way. And I get this sort of subtle, sometimes not so subtle, the associations here and the MLS is here. Like this is more valuable than this is, and so we should always sort of be in charge, whatever that means. I don't know what those words mean anymore, but we hear those kinds of things, right? So, did you have any situations where you had some people on your board that of the association board that were like, "No, I think it's okay the way it is," or were others pushing for it? And did you have any kind of ways that you had to sort of work through that, the differences between them?
Yes. At first, not everybody, even on our board, was behind this idea. They struggled with, well, we need to hire a headhunter, we need to get a new CEO. And in that time when they're trying to evaluate what would work, what would not work, Lori and I together were able to show our membership with transparency, how we could move the association forward, again, working side by side. and showing them what transparency looks like, and it can work. And so
Mhm.
they could kind of feel more comfortable as each month went by, as they dealt with the policies that would allow us to work with two different CEOs.
And eventually, obviously, they said, this is a good idea.
Yes,
Let's move forward.
yes.
Yeah. So I think it's human nature that, when we see this again, some folks, especially they've been involved for a long time, believe that, hey, it is what it is. It works the way it does. And we've all been so conditioned to think MLSs need to run like associations that we kind of don't think of it as abnormal, right? Well, of course we have
Right.
committees. Well, technology companies, you think Apple's got committees? They might have a finance committee to decide how much the CEO makes, whether it's 10 gazillion dollars or 20 gazillion dollars, right? But they're not there's no bottom up sort of thing. The bottom up is coming from customer need, not from the membership kind of concept that we have. So it's very foreign, right? It's not the way we've always looked at the world, but when you look at it relative to other technology services companies, you're like, yeah, maybe that doesn't really make sense, right?
Yes.
It is a little different. So, um, so here's the real question, right? Is how do the customers win with this? So do they get more? Do they get things faster? Do they get it better? Do they get more like what's the upside, right? So Lori, from your perspective, what do you think the upside is for the end user who may not really care, frankly, if there's one CEO or two, it doesn't matter to them, right? But they want to know what they're getting. So how does it make it better for the end user, for the customer of the MLS?
Well, one of the good things about the way our setup was, and we had forward-thinking leadership back in, I think it was in 2018. The current president on the RSC board really worked at educating both the RSC board and the PPAR board on the differences. And so for since 2018, we've been pretty out to be able to function that way where, on the RSC side, they look at just the technology and what needs to happen within the MLS and the services that the MLS provides. They vet it, they make the decisions, and then we just kind of let PPR know what's going on.
Mhm.
PPR has been very, very good about not getting in the weeds of what the MLS does.
Mhm.
They trust what we're doing. They trust who we have on our board, and I
Mhm.
think part of that is making sure that when we present to them that we're very clear in our direction with what we're doing. And of course, we still have, because they're our single hold shareholder, we still have a fiduciary responsibility to them, and so we always have to keep that in mind. I think for the most part, since I've been in this position, whether it was as the director or the CEO, I have had a really good board that's always put the subscriber first and what the needs of the subscriber is. So I've had a very positive experience with that.
So has it made it easier and faster for you to make decisions?
It is now,
Yeah.
yes, because
Yeah.
I'm able to gather the information and I'm able to present it, and I can
Mhm.
present it transparently to my board without having someone else present it, and then you kind of just sit back and just go, well, you didn't give them all the answers, and
Mhm.
giving them enough as a board that when they have the discussion, they've got everything they need.
And you've had two separate boards for a while, but do you commit to having association leaders go to some educational events and then MLS leaders going to others? So some might come to see MLS and others might go to NAR, for example. Do you separate, like divide and conquer on educational opportunities for them?
Lori?
Yeah, for as
Okay.
far as my leadership goes, they do go, we have just recently in the last year to 2 years, I started taking my president and my president-elect, or incoming, my vice president is what we call them, and they
Hmm.
started going to CMLS, and we do clarity, and they were going to NAR and functionality, or NAR conferences. They still go to the legislative ones, but the NXT ones, we've just decided that it's better to take that travel money invested in MLS related
Hmm.
conferences for them, and
Hmm.
so that's what we do.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Um,
And I was going to jump in here too and say that when we went to the two CEO roles,
Mhm.
we created that form of leadership, and it wasn't about dividing. It was more about elevating. It was that it
Mhm.
allowed each organization to focus on what they do best. MLS focuses on technology and we can focus on the association. So there wasn't this battle. It was just an easy way we did business.
Did it sort of take some pressure off of you, Anne Marie, to say, oh my gosh, I don't know what an API is, but I know I should?
That's exactly it, because I am not a technology person at all. So yes, it took a lot of pressure off knowing that I didn't have to be good in that area. I could
Mhm.
focus on what I was really had the skill set for and
Mhm.
move in that direction and let Lori use her skill set to move her organization forward. But together we make a team.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, I can speak because I've worked with both of you. You are a great team. You're very respectful of one another. But again, very honest. If there's something that needs to be addressed, you're really good about that. So, Lori, do you officially report to the PPMLS Board of Directors and not to Anne Marie anymore? Or to
That's
what?
correct. I report
Okay.
to the RSC Board of Directors.
Okay, which is in effect probably what you were kind of doing anyway, right? For
Yeah.
the day-to-day basis. All right, so I have to, just to be fair to this conversation, ask the question about what are the downsides? Do you see is there anything you feel like you're losing? Is there any, discrepancies of, hey, one organization's going one way, one's going another way, or anything you see? Because, I'm always the Pollyanna, oh, it's great, everything's awesome. But we always ask at the other side of it. What are the downsides? Do you see any risks in this kind of an approach?
For the association side,
Yeah, for both of you. I have both of you.
for
Yeah.
us right now, I do not see a downside at all. If anything, we're better doing this the way we're operating now than we ever were before. We're able to address the issues head on with each organization and move more rapidly instead of working through two different boards to get the same thing done.
So was there a time when the MLS board would get something approved, then it would have to go to another board and then like it would take more steps to get things approved? And you removed some of that, or was it always pretty efficient for you guys?
It was pretty efficient.
Yeah.
It was hard seeing like one person try to be good in both different areas because in all honesty, there was weaknesses there
Mhm.
where it seems stronger now because we're good at what we do.
I love that. And Lori, from your perspective, what's the downside? Or what are the risks? Maybe not even downside, but is there any risks that you see?
I I don't know. I don't think there's a downside. Not for the MLS side of things, there's not. If
Okay.
anything, I think it just allows the MLS to do what the MLS should be doing.
Okay, so we're starting to get some questions. Pam is asking, do the boards for the MLS and the association consist of members and or subscribers? In other words, is there any other types of people on your boards, or is it still practitioners pretty much?
Still practitioners,
Okay, gotcha.
So
both boards.
on the RSC side, that is one of the things that's on our radar is to look at bringing in outside of the subscribership.
Okay, so maybe some people with technology background or something else?
Yep, that is correct.
Okay, gotcha. Um, and specific question, what's the number of board members for each and what is the membership customer count? I assume she means of the whole organization, but how big are each of your boards?
For PPAR, it's around 4,000 members, and we have a board of directors of 12 directors, 2 NAR directors, and 5 CAR, state directors.
Okay. And Lori?
And we're at 5,500 subscribers, and our
Mhm.
current board is 13, but we're moving to 11 next year.
Okay, so pretty efficient. Both of them are efficient sized groups. You can get things
Yeah.
done pretty quickly. That's awesome. Okay, now the questions are starting to roll. Let's see. Who handles HR for both of the entities? Do you have one person or do you separate that or outsource it? How does that work?
The HR, we kind of got hung up on for a little bit. We use a service called ADP. So
Okay.
my board of directors was like, well, what if Lori and I have issues? How is that going to be handled? So if if that problem arises, we hope to talk it out, duke it out before it ever gets to that point. But
Mhm.
their board of directors would go to my board of directors, try to work that way. If that
Okay,
didn't, we'd use a facilitator through our employment service, ADP.
got it. Okay. Um, so question is, do you both do you both do your own financials? I believe you both done that for some time because you were separate entities for a long time, long before this happened, right? And do you still have management fees? No, you don't, I don't know. Well, you might, do you share any resources where one pays for the other? Do you have some of those kinds of things still?
Yeah,
We
so
sh-
that is one of the things that we're moving into. And
Okay.
when Anne-Marie talks about having the hard conversations, that's
Mhm.
where we've had some of the hard conversations.
Yeah.
Because for the longest time, when we were under one CEO umbrella, that one CEO would kind of look at, it would do both. And RSC sometimes was paying for things that didn't necessarily, in my mind, fall under, you know, technology. And so
Mhm.
one of the things that when Anne Marie and I got into these two positions, it was like, okay, Anne Marie, we're going to really have to look at this. And we talked about, and I saw the question. Yes, we do have shared staff.
Mhm.
Everybody is employed under PPAR, and RSC does pay for services that those employees do for us. I
Okay.
have probably under RSC, I have 9 employees that are 100% RSC that we pay PPAR for.
Okay.
We used to have we're looking, communications. We're moving away from sharing the communications. So that is something that Anne-Marie and I are having really hard looks at,
Mhm.
because, I mean, there are associations out there that do depend on the MLS for some financial support.
Right.
And so one of the things that we're looking at is, okay, for Anne Marie, and I don't want to speak for her, but making sure that the association is, financially responsible, and on the MLS side, financially responsible too. And how can I come alongside her and
Mhm.
support her, but make sure that that those subscribers that I have that don't belong to PPAR also get the services that they're supposed to be getting.
That's a good point. And I think communications or marketing is probably one of the areas I hear most. Because if you look at that list I showed earlier of all the things that an association communications person has to drive home, it's a lot, right? And sometimes the folks that are really good at like working with the local media and they're sort of more on the public relations side of the house. They're not marketing, technology adoption type people. So I've seen people maybe separate or duplicate, whether that's a agency or an outsourced contractor or an internal staff person. It's more on that side because the story you need to tell for technology is different than what you have to tell. And the kind of people that are frankly passionate about it are a little different as well. So I have seen, and so there is financial implications to that, right? So if you have to stop paying 50%, I'm making it up, but some percentage of the communications person, the association has to embrace that and has to absorb that. And then there's additional costs on the MLS side as well. So sometimes there is some thought about it. It might cost us a little more to do it this way, but at the end of the day, we feel like we're kind of creating two race cars instead of one. And we're providing,
Mhm.
to Anne Marie's point, we're elevating it for everyone, so it's worth that additional focus. So it's an interesting question. Brett asks, why was for-profit chosen as the entity type for PPMLS? And how profits from PPMLS used by its sole shareholder? Are the models where the shareholders of the MLS are not just the parent association board of realtors? There's three big questions there. For-profit, it sounded like that was decided a long time ago, but was that more of a tax issue, or do you know why that was chosen?
Yeah,
I believe, go
go
ahead.
ahead, Amory.
It was a tax issue. We addressed all that in 1987 when we set it up.
Okay,
So we had a very forward-thinking CEO at the time that put that into place, and he did a wonderful job with that.
that's great. So that was the first piece. Then the second piece is how are profits from PPMLS used by by the organization and or the shareholder? Is there revenue share there or I don't
No,
know.
there is not.
Okay.
A lot of it is, when we look at those shared services is how we come alongside. One of the things with being a technology company, when we look at our profits, it's putting back into the technology company. And
Right,
so that,
reinvesting.
right,
Gotcha.
exactly.
Yeah, so that's that same concept. If we want both race cars to have the best engines, we got to continue invest on both sides. And NAR has told us forever that associations should not rely on MLS revenues, right? How many years have they said that? But yet still, to your point, some people still do. And the third question, are there models where the shareholders of the MLS are not just the parent association board of realtors? Yes, there are some that are privately owned. There was one, RE Colorado, last year that was actually sold to one private technology company. There are some that are owned by brokerages. There are some that are owned by brokerages, associations, even appraisers. So there's lots of different models for ownership. It really depends on what your brokerage community believes is the best way to get, to make the MLS the best that it can be and the association. Those private ownership things really are more on the MLS side. I've never seen a privately owned association. It's kind of an interesting thought, but I don't know if that helps. If you have another question, Brett, throw it in there and we'll keep trying to get it for you. Since separating the MLS from the Realtor Association, what governance advantages have you observed with an independent MLS board versus operating as a committee under the association board? So it sounds like you guys did that a long time ago, but can you talk to that a little bit about why a separate board makes sense?
We did do it a long time ago, so we really haven't had any issues since 1987 with that.
That's great. So the question is, can you share specific examples? I mean, since it's so long ago for you guys, you may not remember, but what we see a lot of times is there'll be a committee on the MLS who then has to get approval by the MLS board, and sometimes that group reorchestrates whatever the committee did, which slows things down, right?
Yep,
Then
exactly.
that has to go to another group, sometimes a second committee, or or it goes right to the third tier, which is the association board of directors. And things can break down because if you're on the association board of directors, you have not been in the 5 conversations about this particular technology issue. You're trying to make a decision with sort of like, here's what it is, just say yes. And you might feel uncomfortable because you're not sure you know everything you need to know to make a good decision, right? So to answer your question, that's where a lot of things slow down, is the more groups that you have to approve something, and the further away they get from the daily education about what that technology question is, the more difficult and the slower the process becomes.
Exactly.
That, right?
Yep,
And
exactly.
so that's really where it comes down to, is again, I'm using Apple as a bad example. I mean, huge company, right? But they don't have multiple layers of decision making, right? They do research, they make a recommendation, the product team refers it, and away they go. They hit that button. I actually worked with Microsoft when I was at Fisher Price, who acted very much like an association, very conservative, very slow moving. And we would drive them crazy. It's like, just make a decision and go. Like, we don't have time. We didn't become Microsoft by being like, oh, let's think about it for 6 months. They don't do that. They do it, they go. Frankly, Microsoft announces things before they even build it half the time because they want to stay in front, right? So that's probably the biggest difference, is the more people that you require to get involved in, the less they know, the more uncomfortable they become, and the slower the process is. That's simplest way to look at it, I guess, right? Um, okay, so here's a really good one. With many associations still owning their MLSs, how has your structural separation provided better protection against any of the antitrust tying claims and the stuff that's going on out there? Do you believe there's any legal protections that you've sort of put in place here by having two separate corporations that are connected but not?
I'm gonna say that no.
Okay.
Just that, one of the things with all of these legal things that are going on and with the settlement statement, which of course affected PPMLS,
Hmm.
but because PPR was our shareholder and we were one of the covered MLSs or named MLSs
Hmm.
in the first lawsuit that came out,
Hmm.
because PPR was our shareholder, they had to kind of go under the same orders that we did. In fact, that everything they did, they had to save. Their board of directors were held responsible. My board of directors were, I mean, we were under this. We haven't destroyed anything since the Merle case came out, right?
Hmm.
Um, but yet all of the the documentation and everything that had to be, and all the data and all that had to be given fell under PPMLS. So the heavy work the
Mhm.
MLS had to handle.
Right.
But, the way the structure still works now, we're still covered, being that we're wholly owned, and we're still under that NAR mandate with the NAR insurance.
Mhm.
And so it's not really been a protection for either one, except for the fact that we're under that shareholder umbrella.
Gotcha. And just for those, I think most understand this, but just wholly owned means that 100% of the shares are owned by the shareholder.
That's
You can
correct.
still be a wholly owned realtor organization and have four associations that own you, as long as they're all realtor associations. And then all you need to do is to sell one share, and then you're not wholly owned anymore. So some people talk about that, like some have donated one share to the local community college. So then they're not completely under the pet protection and or control, depending on your perspective of, the NAR policies and insurance. So that people have looked at that differently. Okay, let's see. So Victoria's asking a question. I think you guys kind of covered this, but maybe just do it again quickly. Well, how did you evaluate whether you needed a CEO at the top between the two or those two individual CEOs? It sounded like you kind of worked your way into that, but was there kind of a final moment where you said, no, this is really the right way to do this?
I think for the association side, they spent a year trying to evaluate, do we do it this way? Do we go the leading route? How do we handle this? And bottom line, in January, they took it to a vote and they just said, this is what we believe in, and this is the route we want to go. And I have to commend the board of directors who's could stand up and say, this is what we want. We can lead faster, better, and meet our member needs if we go with two different CEOs.
That's great. So Brett's asking a question, and I'm going to add to his question. His question is, do decisions made by the PPMLS board need to be ratified or approved by the PPR board? I guess I would ask more. I think you've already said no, they're independently, but are there certain things, is there some sort of level of major, quote, major decisions, whatever that might be, that still has to go to the board of the to the shareholder? Are
Yes.
there kind of a list of those? What are those, Lori, would you say?
So any changes to our policy governance have to be ratified by the shareholder. Any
Okay.
changes to our bylaw has to be ratified by the shareholder.
Okay.
And what we do with our board members, even though they go through a nominating committee, application, interview, all of that, they get recommended to the RSC board of directors. The RSC board of directors votes, and then that still has to be ratified by the shareholder.
Okay, so there is still some
Yep.
oversight. You can't completely go off to la la land and say, we're
Oh,
going to
no,
become
no.
an auto dealer. This is our
Right.
new thing, and we don't care what you say. There's still a close part, and again, it's hard for everybody to see it because I just know you guys well. These guys work together really, really well. There's a mutual respect. There's a mutual understanding of that they have different skills and that they work, 1 + 1 = 3 kind of thing. It's really neat. And I would say that if you are thinking about this in your marketplace, you better darn well make sure you got two people at the helm that do that already, right? Or that if you're hiring one and there's another one in place, make sure that that's one of your criteria is that these two folks can work together really well. Because if it starts to break down at the staff level and or the board level, it sometimes breaks down at the board level too. The boards have to be able to come together and mutually respect each other too. So just like any professional organization, that's kind of critical, but I do see that sometimes people get off on that. They get off kilter on that a little bit and it doesn't work as well. Okay, here's another good one. Jeanette's asking, does the association shareholder have the authority to sell the MLS to an outside entity without getting full MLS approval? These guys are in Colorado, so they know exactly what you're referring to because Ari Colorado is the example. So tell us about that. How does that work? Who
It,
can sell if you chose that you ever did want to sell?
it's a great question. And we value our MLS. We see it as an asset, but we don't stick our heads in the sand and say, well, all these MLSs are not being sold. What do we need to do? So we're not ignoring those challenges. So
Okay.
our board of directors have spent time studying the landscape
Okay.
nationally and statewide,
Mhm.
understanding the legal environment and evaluating what the changes could mean for us. And
Okay.
so for right now, we're very confident to say we're going to stay as is. We like our product, we like our asset, we like the MLS. We're comfortable there. Could it
Mhm.
come to a day? Maybe. We don't know. But for today, this is how we're operating.
So if you were going to consider that,
Mm-hmm.
how do you envision it working? Would the both boards be involved with that? Would it, how do you see how that relationship might work as you were considering something like that?
I would pray it happens just like Lori and I work together in that we're upfront and we're honest and
Mhm.
we share that burden. We share making those decisions together. It cannot be one-sided.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I think sometimes that's, I mean, in Ari Colorado's case, people were worried and nobody really knows how that works, so I'm not here to make any judgments, but the perception was the associations did it without the MLS's engagement. I have no idea if that's true. So, but I think that's the way you said it is the right way to, to like everything, like work together on this. It doesn't make sense. And frankly, that particular issue, um, there's a whole bunch of questions you need to ask about
Mhm.
how to protect the best interest of the practitioner and the user before you'd even consider something like that. So if anybody on the call ever has that, I have a list of, one day I was driving through the state of Colorado, ironically, I had like 3 hours in the car and I could just, my brain, not dangerous, let me think without doing anything for 3 hours, came up with this whole list of things of what about this and how do you protect that and make sure this, right? So if anybody's ever looking at that, I've got the list. Call me, I'll help you with that. Here's another one, and I know you guys
Well,
have,
can I say something real quick, Marilyn?
absolutely. Yep.
Because with this conversation and some of the questions. So
Mhm.
just so everybody understands a little bit of how we're set up, even though that RSC can make its own decisions as far as how it's going to advance the MLS, one of the things is that the president and incoming president or president-elect of the association, our
Mhm.
shareholders, are invited to our board meetings and they can sit in our boardroom all the way through as ex officios. And
Okay.
then the president and president-elect of the RSC board sit in the shareholder meeting
Oh,
and
good.
they do present to the shareholder board what we're doing. So
Okay,
it's
good.
not that I did because I'm like, oh, I wanted them to understand that, just like how Anne Marie and I are working together, there's transparency between the two boards. So
Great.
that it's not that we're just going off and doing our thing and the shareholders the shareholder gets our financials are presented to the shareholder every board meeting, so they're aware of what we're doing.
Great.
I just wanted to clarify that so that it
Mhm.
didn't make it sound like, hey, we're just going off and doing what we want, because that's not the case.
But you're just, thank you for clarifying that because I do think it's important that regardless of your structure, that's a good best practice. Even if you're a committee, that's still a good best practice, right?
Yeah.
Um, but the board leader on one side and the board leader on the other side are two separate people. You don't have crossover in terms of actual leaders. They
No,
they
Correct.
none of
they
our board.
attend, right? They attend meetings, but they're not on both boards. Is that correct?
Correct. That's correct.
I see that happening a lot, and that worries me if you think about piercing the corporate veil, because if I have full awareness and or control of two sets of financials, I can start doing this over here and that over there and start playing games. That's one of the areas where you can get in trouble is if you're not completely transparent that I'm operating in the best interest of this organization versus this organization. So that's
Well,
important.
and our attorney or yeah, our former attorney used to be very, very good about warning our shareholder that they have to be very careful about crossing that line because they could lose their non-exempt status in that
Correct.
case.
That's correct.
So,
So a lot of people still have that role where the exec committee is the same on both, and I worry about that. If they're two separate companies and you have the same people running both, it's easy to argue that there could be conflicts of interest between one and the other. So it is important to take a look at that for sure. So another area that comes up is they ask the question, is your organization open? And I kind of hate that word open. Can we just say that you accept licensee onlys that are not realtors into your MLS, right? The word open sounds like, your grandmother can come in and join if she feels like it. That's not what we mean, right? These are all licensed practitioners in the state of Colorado, but some have chosen to be a realtor and some have chosen not to. Do you accept those that are licensee onlys into your MLS?
yes, we do. We have for a long time where they could come in and have search capabilities in that. In 2023, we opened it for the lack of a better word, we opened it up completely. And so,
Right.
yes, we, uh, and in the state of Colorado, what a lot of people don't realize is that it's about 50-50, 50
Okay. Wow.
licensees and 50 that are realtors. So we have a large population of a licensees only.
Gotcha. And do you track if they're licensee onlys or if they're realtors within your MLS?
Yes.
Do you have any rough idea of what percentage of them are non, are licensee only?
It's growing, but it's still a small percentage.
Yeah, we've seen across the country, just for those who are asking that question, 1 to 3% is what, and this can be even for organizations that went open 30 years ago and some that have just gone, in the last couple of months. So it's not a significant number usually. So far, I know a lot of people are worried that the association will get really struck hard by that, but it hasn't really played out. Um, Brett is asking about fee structures. Brett, I don't think we want to talk about fee structures on this unless you can just talk generically, but I think let's steer clear of that for antitrust reasons. Um, okay, now we're getting into this whole open MLS thing. I think we want to, that's a whole other webinar, by the way. We've done 2 of those, and when we send this one out, I'll send you those for those who are interested, and that's a whole different topic. And there's a lot going on there, and I'm happy to help you guys with that too, but this is about, the
Yeah, and
separation.
I'm happy if they want to reach out,
Yeah.
and I would gladly happy to answer questions offline.
Yeah, and so there's a couple that I know, Victoria and one other. Feel free to reach out, or I'll reach out to you, and I'm happy to tell you more about the goods and the bads and the uglies of how that all that whole thing works. So, final, we're at the top of the hour. I would love each of you to give your sort of take on, if you've been there, so you know what it's like to have to consider these kinds of situations. You've both been in the situation where you're like, I think it makes sense to have 2 senior level people running this, but our board hasn't quite gotten there yet. Now you're seeing the other side of it, and it seems like things are really going down the road, even though you have a long way to go to completely be separate, right? There's still a lot more to
Correct.
do.
Yeah.
But just words of advice for people that are in the thinking about this, starting to think about it, almost there, not quite, have, almost got there and it got pulled beside it. Just give me your final. What are some advice you would give to the folks on the call?
You want to start, Lori, or?
No, go ahead, Anna Marie.
Just on a personal level, I feel better knowing I have a partner going alongside me when the landscape changes so quickly. You have someone else to think things through with.
Mm,
Not leadership, not board of directors, but somebody who's in the weeds with me and can
right.
help me. And for that, it's worth every bit of it.
So how do you tell a board of, not how tell a board of directors, you don't tell board directors, you work with boards of directors, but how do you think you communicate that, again, that sort of 1 + 1 = 3 kind of mindset? How do you think you drive that home for a group that's looked at it the traditional way for a long time?
I think it just provides more clarity and
Hmm.
honestly more speed to get things done because you can
Okay,
focus on a few things really, really well or focus on a whole lot of things and not get anything done. So this
gotcha.
Yeah.
way works, this model works for us because we're able to move faster and quicker and with more clarity.
And I love the word you used earlier, that you feel like it elevated both
Yes,
organizations.
correct.
Made both of them better.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's hard, when it's the unknown. Of course, it's always fearful to see the unknown, but you've come out the other end and have said it really has helped elevate both, which is great. And Lori, final. Any other thoughts from the MLS side of the house? How people should look at it?
Well, I think the way they should look at it is they should just do it. I mean, I wish I had this glowing words of advice to give,
Hmm.
but I know for me, being able to be at the helm of the MLS, and being able to be the one that just brings everything to the board, and I don't have, Anne-Marie doesn't have to worry about, you know, what is, you know, is the MLS doing what they're doing because they can trust that person who's in charge, makes a huge difference. Um, I mean, we've been kind of functioning that way for the last 5 years. It just and we did fall under what you talked about with the whole, this is the MLS and this is the association. And over
Mhm.
this 5 years, we've come to be like this.
I love
And
that.
so I think too, the people that you have on your boards make all the difference in the world
Mhm.
also. And so I
Yes.
think what you do to vet those people and
Mhm.
bring those people in and what their criteria is
Mhm.
makes a big difference.
That's really good advice. And it's so difficult to do that, but taking the time to nurture and educate and bring people up to speed about what a technology services company does versus what an association does, and they're both really powerful and amazing, but they're different. That's all great advice. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys taking the time. And congratulations on your success. I think seems to be working very, very well. One little snippet that I will say that I've seen that I can't share specifics with, but I can tell you that the organizations that more overtly separate themselves, whether that be from a brand or a leadership or all of the above, when we look at our customer experience index results, our surveys that we do for markets all across the country, those markets generally tend to fare better than those that create sort of market confusion and everything's all under one. So for what it's worth, it does seem to be appreciated by the end user when you really get there. So anyway, thanks so much. Thank you to everyone that was on the call. We a
Thank
couple have
you.
asked, yes, we have recorded it. We will send it out to you. And if you have any questions or comments about any of this, I'm sure Lori or Anne Marie's happy to help. If you want to reach out to me at Marilyn at Wavegroup, happy to do that too. And we even had someone here from Hawaii saying mahalo. Thanks, Vincent. So happy holidays, everybody, and more to come. Happy to help anybody that needs help with this stuff. Have a great day.
Happy holidays.
Okay.
Happy holidays.